There's one shift that separates people who find their success from people who spend their entire lives looking for it. And this has nothing to do with hard work, where you went to school, where you came from, or who you even know. You might have spent years doing the right thing. In college, it was getting the good GPA, then the internships, then making your resume right. And on paper, everything looks great. But if someone asked you to prove what you can actually do, not what you've been credentialed in, but what you can tangibly do, would you be able to show them anything? Most people can't. They have a list of places that they've been to, but nothing to show what they've actually built. They have credentials, but they don't have any proof. So it doesn't come down to a work ethic problem because everybody is working really hard. It comes down to a direction problem. And one shift will fix all of that. It comes down to understanding the difference between things that expire and things that compound. Once you start seeing this, it's really hard to go back to the old way. In this video, I'm going to break down the one shift and what that actually looks like. Let me explain what I mean. Think about the last time you submitted a job application online. You spent what, maybe 30 minutes to an hour tailoring your resume, writing a cover letter, and then clicking submit. What happened to that hour? If you don't get the job, it's gone. That time produced nothing. And you start from scratch for the next one. Now think about the last time that you learned something that genuinely changed how you think. Maybe it was from a book, a conversation, a project that you worked on. That key insight is still with you today. It's shaped how you see things, how you operate, and it's compounding right now, in this moment, whether you realize it or not. This is the shift that I'm talking about. Most people will fill their lives with things that expire. They check boxes that disappear, and they keep collecting credentials that deprecate the moment that somebody else gets the same thing that they have. The quickest way you can start adopting this is to think about building a portfolio and viewing yourself as your own company. This isn't some sort of design portfolio that artists produce, unless you're into art. I'm talking about a portfolio of proof, evidence that you can think, create, and solve problems. Things that would exist in the world, whether or not someone gave you permission to make them or not. A resume will tell people that, trust me, I'm qualified, versus a portfolio tells people, here, this is exactly what I've done. One requires belief and the other is undeniable because it's rooted in proof. Right now, most people are walking around with a list of places that they've been and titles that they've held. If you took away the company name on their resume, there'd be nothing left. There's not really any skills developed, there's no proof of the work that they worked on, and they don't necessarily have a reputation. This is a very fragile way to live, especially as we move to the wisdom economy and out of the knowledge economy that we've been in for the past 80 or so years. Deep down, you already know these things though. So what's actually supposed to go into this portfolio? So we're gonna talk about the 3 things that compound that most people are completely unaware of. First, you have to start developing skills that stack. Most people will go deep on one thing. They become the finance person, the marketing person, or the coding person. And that works until that one thing gets disrupted. The person who only knows how to build financial models is in trouble when AI builds them in seconds. But the person who can build the model and communicate the insight and sell the recommendation to a skeptical audience, that person becomes irreplaceable. And this isn't necessarily about becoming a generalist. It's about building different layers. Each skill makes the other one more valuable. Think about it like this. Writing is a skill on its own. Marketing is a skill on its own. But somebody who can write and understands marketing, that's not just 2 separate skills. This is a new capability that not many people have. When you combine skills, they don't add linearly, they multiply exponentially. And this is the thing that's really wild. The skills that matter the most right now are the ones that can't be automated. It's communication, persuasion, critical thinking, and the ability to walk into a room with no playbook and just figure it out. If you're spending all of your time learning tools and 0 time learning how to think, you're investing in the thing that will deprecate the fastest. There's been many reports lately that the new version of AI is being written by the old version of AI. And so it's just inevitable that this new technology that's being created in front of our eyes is going to be able to handle tangible skills that used to take an army of humans to do. We're entering into an era where the smartest thing in the room might not be a person. And so the question becomes, what can you do that a machine can't do? And the answer to this is that you have to be able to think in ways that haven't been programmed. You have to connect the dots that nobody's going to connect. And you have to make other humans feel understood and be able to connect to one another. These are the skills that will compound forever. So let me give you a real example that makes a little bit more sense. I spent years in finance. I could build models, do analysis, do the technical work required, but so could everyone else in the room. What actually separated me wasn't necessarily the technical skills. It was who could take a messy, complicated situation, figure out what actually matters, and explain it to somebody in 30 seconds. That's not necessarily a finance skill at all. That's more of a thinking skill, and it transfers to everything. So when you're thinking about what skills to build, don't just ask yourself what's in demand right now. Ask what will still be valuable when everything else changes. The answer to that is almost always the ability to think clearly, the ability to communicate effectively, and the ability to solve problems that nobody solved before. These aren't skills that you can learn in a class. They're skills that you build by doing hard things, working on real projects, repeatedly and across multiple domains. Now, with that said, it's still really important to understand specific skills like financial modeling, marketing, or whatever else you're interested in. But it becomes less about knowing how to actually build a financial model and more about using the AI technologies that will help you build these financial models. The second thing that compounds more than anybody else realizes is relationships. And it's something that most people completely overlook. And it's honestly the one thing that's changed the trajectory of my life more than anything else. Every opportunity that actually mattered in my life came through a relationship. It wasn't from an application, a job board, but it was from a real conversation. I've talked about this in my previous videos, and I don't mean networking because that's transactional, everyone can feel it. You're not here to collect business cards or LinkedIn's. I'm talking about something completely different. I'm talking about being genuinely curious about other people, having a real conversation, and following up because you actually care. And it's not because you want something, it's because you're just curious and you want to learn more about this individual. The thing is that most people only reach out when they actually need something, whether it's a job, a referral, advice, and by that time, it's already too late. The relationship doesn't yet exist. You have to build it before you go and ask for something. Think about that for a second. You wouldn't walk up to a stranger and ask them to lend you money, but that's essentially what people are doing with professional relationships. They skip the entire trust building process and go straight to the ask. And then they wonder why nobody responds or is helping them. The people who always seem to land on their feet, they're not getting lucky. They spend months and years making deposits into relationships before they ever needed to actually withdraw anything. Every coffee chat, every thoughtful message, every time you helped someone without expecting anything back, all will compound. They'll quietly start building up until the moment that you actually need them. And then the goodwill that you've built will open up doors for you. I can trace back almost every meaningful thing that's happened in my career to a relationship that started with zero agenda, just genuine curiosity. It's just a normal conversation. Me asking, what are you working on? Hearing the response and thinking that's interesting, asking more questions, asking them how they got into that, and then going from there. It's simply just making friends. That's it. That's the entire playbook. And the beautiful thing about relationships is that they compound in ways that you can't predict. You have coffee with somebody, and 2 years later, they think of you for an opportunity you didn't even know existed. And it wasn't because you asked them. It's because you were memorable, sharp, and because the relationship that you built was very real. These are things that you can't really engineer. You can only make the deposits stay consistent and trust the process. The third thing that will compound are assets that exist without you. This is the thing that really separates people who spend their whole life dependent on somebody else. This is the thing that really separates the people who find their success, find their money, find their joy, find their peace of mind from the people who spend their entire lives agonizing over every little thing and always searching for what could have been. So I want you to ask yourself this question and be very honest. If your job disappeared tomorrow, what would you have left? If the answer is just a resume, that creates real problems. An asset is anything that creates value for you when you're not actively working on it. It could be a newsletter you're writing, project that you've built that people use, a community you've created around something that you care about, and content that keeps reaching people months after you've created it. And so here's why this matters a lot. When you have an asset, something that's in your name, you stop being dependent on other people's decisions. You're not waiting for somebody to hire you. You're not hoping for the algorithm to pick up your resume out of a pile of 1,000. You have proof, you have demonstration of skills that you have, and you have something to point to. And this changes the entire dynamic. And I know what you might be thinking. I don't have time to build a side project. I'm not a content creator. And that's totally fine. An asset doesn't have to be public. No one has to ever see it besides you. It could be a deep research project you did on an industry that you care about. It could be a spreadsheet that does analysis. It could be something that you did just for fun that demonstrates how you think, what your interests are, and most importantly, showcases what you can actually do. The point isn't the format, but the point is, did you build something that proves what you're capable of? Because the person who walks into a room and says, here's something that I've built, will always beat the person who walks in and says, here's a list of things I've done for other people. You don't need 10 assets. You don't need something extravagant. You just need one thing. It can be very, very simple. One thing that's yours, one thing that compounds, and one thing that speaks for you when you're not in the room. And I want to be clear, it doesn't have to be complex at all. It can be very simple and rudimentary. So when you start moving with this operating system, a lot of things will start to change. You'll stop asking, how do I get a job or how do I further advance my career? And you'll start asking yourself, what am I truly building? And that question leads you to somewhere completely different. Instead of mass applying and hoping, you start working on something real and something that's yours that will eventually lead you to the right place. For example, if you're really interested in sports and you go and do a deep dive on all of the new sports companies that have been formed in the past 30 days, and you send that to somebody, that'll go a lot further than just saying, I'm interested in working in sports. So the point is, it can be very simple, or you can create something very complex if you have the time and the means. Think about a person who writes an essay once a week about their industry. After a year, they have 50 pieces of proof that they can think clearly about a space. Who are you going to hire? The person who wrote about the industry maybe has developed some relationships, or someone with a bullet point that says strong analytical skills. The comparison is not even close. And this is the part that makes it all worth it. The portfolio of proof doesn't just get you a job. It'll start changing your relationship with uncertainty. The economy can shift, industries can get disrupted, AI can automate half of the jobs on LinkedIn, but you'll still be fine because what you've built, the skills, the relationships, the assets, those are yours. And nobody can really take them. A layoff, a recession, or even an algorithm can't erase what's been compounding for you. So this is what future-proofing actually means. It's not really about predicting what's coming. It's about building yourself into somebody who can adapt to whatever might come next. The people who will struggle are the ones that are too rigid in their thinking. They're locked into one path, one skill, one way of thinking. But the people who thrive are fluid. These are the people who can learn, adapt, and create value no matter what the landscape looks like. So here's what I challenge you to do this week. Take 10 minutes and do a quick portfolio audit. Ask yourself 3 questions. 1, what skills am I building that's stacked with one another? Not just what's on your course schedule or what your job description is. What are you actually getting better at? And does it compound with anything else that you know? If the answer is I'm only good at one thing, then that's your signal. Find the second layer that's adjacent to that. The thing that combined with what you already know will make you rare. Second thing is ask yourself what relationships professionally am I investing in without an agenda? When was the last time you reached out to someone just because you were genuinely curious about what they were working on? Not because you needed something, not because you were networking, just because you were simply interested. If you can't remember, send just one message this week. No ask, just be curious. The third thing you need to ask yourself is, what do I own that exists without me? Is there anything that you've built, could be a project, a piece of writing, a community, or anything that creates value or has some sort of compounding long-term effect without you touching it? If the answer is nothing, it's not a failure. This becomes your starting point. Just pick one thing and start building it. Most people will never do this audit, and they'll keep submitting applications into the void that just expire, collecting credentials that start to depreciate in their value, and they start wondering why they feel stuck. You don't have to be most people. You're already ahead just by the fact that you found yourself watching this video. I write about topics like this every week in my newsletter. How to build the skills, the relationships, proof that actually compounds. The link is in the description if you want to go deeper. I'll see you in the next video.